I gave 10 years of my life to that company, loyalty, sweat, and everything in between. Then one morning I was fired without a word of warning. What the new CEO didn't know was that wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of his. I still remember the smell of fresh paint and new carpet from my first day at the company. I was 24, young, hungry, and full of dreams. The office wasn't fancy, but it had a heartbeat. People smiled in the hallways. Managers actually remembered your name. It wasn't just a job back then. It felt like home. I started as a junior technician in maintenance, fixing busted printers and wiring cubicles. It wasn't glamorous, but I was proud of it. I worked hard, stayed late, volunteered for the stuff nobody wanted to do, and people noticed. Within 3 years, I was leading the department. My team, they were more like family, Frank with his dumb coffee jokes, Gina who could fix any network issue with her eyes closed, even Tony who grumbled every morning but never missed a day. We looked out for each other. When someone's kid was sick, we covered their shifts. When someone's car broke down, someone else gave them a ride. It wasn't in the job description, it was just who we were. Back then, the CEO was a quiet, thoughtful guy named Russell. He believed in people, not just numbers. He'd stop by the break room sometimes just to ask how things were going. Once, when I suggested a way to streamline system checks, he invited me to present it to the board. Me, a maintenance guy, that meant something. It made me believe I had a future there. For a while I did. Promotions came slowly, but they came. Raises were modest but consistent. The company grew, and so did we. There were late nights, sure, stressful deadlines, but we had each other and we had a boss who gave a damn. I didn't realize how fragile that kind of place was, how easily it could all be rewritten with the stroke of a pen and a change in title. Looking back now, I see the signs I missed, the little cracks that were already forming beneath the surface. But at the time, all I knew was that I had a place where I belonged, a job I loved, a team I trusted. I had no idea how quickly it could all be taken away. The first email about the change came on a quiet Thursday morning. Subject line, Leadership Update. I remember thinking it was just another reshuffling upstairs. But then I read the name, Daniel Carr, new CEO, effective immediately. Nobody had heard of him, not in our circles anyway. There was no farewell from Russell, no thank you message, just gone, replaced. Something about strategic direction and accelerated growth. Corporate speak that never meant anything good. At first, the changes were subtle. A few department heads were replaced. Some budgets got frozen. The weekly staff meetings got a lot shorter, a lot colder. Then came the memos, no more overtime without approval, performance reviews every quarter instead of annually, and a bizarre new rule about personal device usage. It felt like someone had flipped a switch overnight. I watched the mood shift like weather. People stopped lingering in the break room. Laughter disappeared. Everyone started watching their backs. One guy in HR got let go for restructuring. Then someone from marketing. Then a manager I'd worked with for years, no reason given, just a box of their stuff and an awkward goodbye. When it reached our department, we were all on edge. We kept our heads down, kept working, but it was like waiting for lightning to strike. Daniel never walked the floors like Russell used to. The only time I saw him in person was during a company-wide video call. Slick hair, sharp suit, voice like an investment ad. He smiled a lot, but none of it reached his eyes. "We're entering a new era," he said. "One where performance, efficiency, and alignment will determine everything." I remember the way Gina looked at me during that call. She didn't say anything, but her eyes told the truth. We were in trouble. Still, part of me hoped we'd be fine. That if we worked hard and stayed out of sight, we'd weather the storm. We were the good guys after all, loyal, proven, necessary. But I was wrong. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here, and I was about to be the next one hit. I woke up one cloudy Monday with a vague sense of unease. The familiar hum of my alarm did nothing to shake that feeling. I went about my morning routine mechanically, unaware that by noon my world would be turned upside down. I arrived at the office expecting another day of cautious work, but as soon as I entered, something was off. The air felt heavy, and whispers trailed down the hallways like a dark tide. By early afternoon, word had spread that a meeting was being called for all team members. With uneasy curiosity, I joined the group in the conference room, where I saw a mixture of anxious and resigned faces. The new CEO, Daniel Carr, had summoned us all, his presence a stark reminder of the fresh wounds he had inflicted on our company culture. Before anyone could speak, he began his address with a rehearsed smile and a tone too polished to conceal his intent. Without warning, he started announcing a series of departmental realignments. He spoke of cost-cutting measures and redundancies that were necessary for the greater efficiency of the company. I sat frozen, watching as my name was read out among a list of excess positions. At that moment, my stomach sank as I realized what was happening. I was being let go. Confusion battled with humiliation as I fumbled through the shock. I thought back to all the sacrifices I had made, the extra hours, the loyalty, the dreams I'd built here. I tried to ask for clarification, to understand where I'd gone wrong, but my words died in my throat. Daniel's eyes, cold and distant, offered no comfort. The meeting ended abruptly, and I left the room with a box of personal belongings and a sense of betrayal deeper than I could articulate. In that instant, my identity felt shattered. The job that had once been a dream turned out to be a crushing disappointment. As I walked through the corridors that I'd known so well, I saw more than just empty desks. I saw a future that had vanished without warning. I realized then that the system I trusted was rigged against us, and in that crushing, silent moment of isolation, the seed of resolve began to take root, a determination that I wouldn't let this injustice define me or my colleagues' worth. The first few days after I was fired felt like walking through a fog. I'd wake up around the same time, instinctively reach for my badge, then remember I had nowhere to go. The silence of my apartment was louder than any factory floor or buzzing server room. It echoed with questions I couldn't answer. What did I do wrong? Why me? Wasn't I good enough? I tried to keep busy, updated my resume, sent out a few job applications, but every time I hit submit, it felt hollow, like I was rewriting a version of myself that no longer existed. My confidence, once rock solid, was now riddled with doubt. Bills didn't care about feelings. Rent came, utilities came, and the severance package, it was barely enough to get through a couple months. I started cutting corners, canceled subscriptions, skipped meals. I even sold my guitar, the one I'd saved up for during my first year on the job. That one hurt. What hurt even more was the silence from the people I used to see every day. My team, my friends, I knew they were scared to reach out. Maybe they thought they'd be next, or maybe they didn't know what to say. Either way, it felt like I'd been erased, like I'd never mattered at all. At my lowest, I considered walking away from it all, not just the company, but everything. Move back home. Start over somewhere quiet. Be invisible. It was a dark place, and I stayed there longer than I'd like to admit. But something inside me kept flickering. A quiet, stubborn part that wouldn't go out. I thought about the others, Frank, Gina, Tony. I thought about the look in their eyes during that video call with Daniel Carr. They were still in there, still trying to survive under that man's shadow. And slowly that flicker grew into something sharper. Anger, yes, but also clarity. They took my job. They shattered my sense of worth. But they didn't take away what I knew about the system, the people, and the way we'd always had each other's backs. I wasn't done yet. It started with a text from Gina. "Hey, you around?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying. We hadn't spoken since the day I left. I expected a pity-filled check-in, maybe an awkward sorry, but what I got was something else entirely. We met at a diner just outside of town. She looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. She ordered coffee, black, and leaned in like we were planning a heist. "It's worse," she said. "Since you left, they've cut more hours. Tony's on probation for performance issues. Frank got written up for helping someone after his shift ended. People are scared, Eric." I felt a mix of guilt and anger rise in my chest. I'd been so caught up in my own spiral, I hadn't realized how deep the rot had spread. "Why now?" I asked. "Because they're pushing harder," she said, "and people are starting to talk." That's when she told me I wasn't the only one who'd been blindsided. 3 more had been quietly let go in the past 2 weeks. All of them long-timers, all of them the kind who asked questions or spoke up. "They're trying to scare us into silence," she said. And for the most part, it was working. But not completely. Later that night, I got another message, this one from Tony, then Frank, then someone from accounting I barely knew. Quiet whispers, cautious calls, private chats. All of them said the same thing in different words. "We can't keep living like this." It was the first time since I'd been fired that I didn't feel alone. We weren't just victims. We were witnesses. And maybe, just maybe, we could become something more. I didn't know exactly what we were going to do. I wasn't some kind of hero. I was a guy who'd lost everything. But now I wasn't the only one. There were others out there, waiting, watching, whispering in the dark. And those whispers were starting to sound a lot like a plan. It started small, a group message thread with 5 of us. Then 7, then 12. We didn't call it anything official at first, just the break room. A digital space where we could talk without eyes watching us from glass offices or email logs. Everyone was cautious, paranoid even. Some used burner accounts. Others insisted on voice-only calls, but once the fear began to settle, the stories came pouring out. Micromanagement, unpaid overtime, verbal threats masked as coaching. People were afraid of making one mistake, one wrong look, and getting axed. It was survival of the quietest, keep your head down, keep your mouth shut. We were angry, but more than that, we were tired. That's when Gina brought it up. We need to organize. At first, the room went silent, not a single typing bubble. I think we all knew what she meant, but no one wanted to say the word out loud. Unions. It felt radioactive, dangerous, the kind of thing you whisper about, not plan around, but the more we talked, the more it started to make sense. We can't just keep reacting, Tony said. We need to take the power back. So we started reading. Late-night calls, shared articles, stories from other workplaces that had done it, quietly, carefully, legally. We weren't naive. We knew the risks. People had families to feed, rent to pay. One wrong move and they'd be out just like me. But we also knew what we stood to lose if we did nothing. Everything. Frank said it best one night. We've always had each other's backs. This time, let's put it in writing. That was when it became real. We weren't just venting anymore. We were planning. We agreed to meet in person. Neutral ground. No phones, no notes, just us and our shared resolve. It felt dangerous, it felt impossible. But more than anything, it felt right. Because something had been taken from us, our dignity, our safety, our voice. Now we were ready to take it back. The first in-person meeting was in the back room of a rundown community center. No logos, no cameras, just a circle of metal chairs and the sound of our own nervous breathing. There were 11 of us, maintenance workers, admins, a guy from IT. Gina brought someone from accounting, shy, soft-spoken, but sharp. We didn't waste time. We all knew why we were there. This is bigger than just being fed up, I said. We're not just talking anymore, we're organizing. There were nods, some hesitant, some firm, but the tension was thick. We weren't just dreaming now, we were stepping into something dangerous. We divided tasks, outreach, legal research, safe contacts. Gina had a cousin who'd helped unionize a local hospital. She got us a name, a labor rights rep willing to speak off record. Frank volunteered to speak to night shift workers. Tony, despite his gruffness, agreed to talk to a few of the younger hires. We all had a part to play. But the deeper we got, the louder the warning signs became. 2 days after that meeting, one of our quietest allies, Marcy from data entry, was called into a closed-door meeting with HR. She came back pale, shaken. They know something's going on, she whispered to me in the parking lot. They asked if I'd seen any unauthorized organizing behavior. She denied everything, but the message was clear. They were watching. Then Daniel sent out a company-wide email, a polished, thinly veiled threat. While we support open dialogue, any efforts to disrupt our operations or violate company policy will be dealt with swiftly and decisively. The fear came flooding back. A few people backed out. One messaged me saying, I can't lose this job, I'm sorry. I understood, I really did, but it still felt like a gut punch. We were walking a tightrope with no safety net. Every step forward felt heavier than the last, but beneath the fear was something stronger, conviction. They wanted us scattered, afraid, alone. But we were. Every threat only made us bolder. We weren't just organizing. We were resisting. It all came to a head the day they fired Gina. No warnings, no meeting. Just a silent escort out of the building and a generic email. Effective immediately, Gina Morales is no longer with the company. We thank her for her service. I found out from Tony, who texted me in all caps. They got Gina. My hands were shaking, not just from anger, from fear. Gina was the backbone of our effort, smart, careful, strategic. If they could get her, they could get any of us. For a moment, everything almost unraveled. People panicked. Messages flooded our chat. Are we next? Do we shut it down? Is this even worth it? I didn't blame them. I felt the same way. I paced my apartment like a caged animal, thinking about everything we'd done, the meetings, the whispers, the risk. Maybe we'd pushed too far. Maybe we'd gotten people hurt. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of running, more people stepped forward. Marcy messaged me, "I'm in, they can't silence all of us." Frank called that night, his voice cracked. "She stood up for us, man. We can't let them bury her like she never mattered." That was it, the moment everything changed. Gina's firing wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The next day we launched a petition, anonymous but widespread. A demand for transparency, fair treatment, and reinstatement for Gina. Within 2 days, nearly half the company had signed it, including managers, including people we never even spoke to before. Then we got a call from a local labor rights group. They'd heard about us. They offered help, guidance, resources, legal advice. We weren't alone anymore. And that terrified Daniel. New rules dropped overnight. Mandatory check-ins, new surveillance software. People were being called into HR every hour, questioned, warned. But the more pressure he applied, the stronger we got. Because fear had once kept us quiet, now it kept us connected. We weren't a dozen voices in the dark anymore. We were a movement. And we were just getting started. The vote wasn't supposed to happen so fast. We thought we had more time to organize, to prepare, to build support. But pressure was mounting from every direction. HR was in overdrive, trying to keep people divided. Daniel issued yet another cold-blooded memo warning against outside influence. Even some of our allies began to doubt if we were ready. But the truth was we were. For weeks we'd built this from nothing, whispers in parking lots, quiet messages after hours, tearful phone calls, and desperate hopes. We'd come together not just because of what we lost, but because of what we wanted back: dignity, security, and a say in our own lives. So when the Labor Board confirmed our petition met the threshold, they scheduled the official vote. It felt surreal walking into that meeting room. A long table, a locked ballot box, an observer from the Labor Board watching silently in the corner. People entered in waves, gave their names, and cast their votes, yes or no. Simple, but nothing about it felt simple. I stood outside afterward, hands in my pockets, heart pounding. It all came down to this. A few people wouldn't meet my eye on their way out. Some nodded quietly. Others, like Frank and Tony, gave me a firm look, the kind you give someone when you know they stood in the fire with you. We waited 2 days for the result. I didn't sleep much during that time. None of us did. Then the email came. The vote to unionize has passed. Effective immediately, we will begin the process of formal recognition and collective bargaining. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. Tony called me screaming. Frank cried. Marcy said she'd never felt this proud in her life. People were hugging in stairwells, high-fiving in break rooms, crying quietly at their desks. We had done it. Not just for us, for everyone who had ever felt small, silenced, replaceable, for Gina, for the ones who left, for the ones still too scared to speak. We didn't just vote. We made history. The office felt different after the vote. Not louder, not more chaotic, just more alive. People walked taller, smiles came easier. Conversations weren't filled with fear. For the first time in a long while, we weren't just employees, we were people again. A week after the announcement, I returned to the building not as a worker, but as a guest. I had a meeting with our newly elected union committee. Frank and Marcy were co-chairs. Tony handled communications. They asked me to advise, and I said yes without hesitation. Seeing them around that table, the same people who once whispered in fear now sitting in full daylight, planning, strategizing, speaking boldly, it filled me with something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. I still didn't have a job, my savings were thin, but I had something far more valuable, a sense of purpose. What we'd done here wasn't just about one company or one CEO. It was about people standing up when it mattered most. A week later, we got news that Gina had filed for wrongful termination, and with union support behind her, her case was strong. She'd become a quiet symbol of our movement. When we spoke again, she laughed through tears and said, "You know, I thought it was over the day they fired me. Turns out it was just the start." Daniel Carr, the CEO who tried to gut us from the inside, had gone quiet. Rumors said the board was reevaluating leadership. Whether he stayed or went didn't matter as much now, because we had power that didn't rely on any one person. It wasn't perfect. Organizing was just the beginning. The real fight, negotiations, policy change, protections was ahead. But now we were ready. Looking back, I realized I didn't lose everything when they fired me. I lost the illusion that I had no control. And in its place, I found something stronger: unity, voice, and fire. They tried to silence me. Instead, they helped me start a revolution.